Hello and welcome to this webinar on triggers to eating. My name is Alice Murray-Gawley and I'm a dietitian working within the weight management service in Taunton. As humans, we know that everyone eats for different reasons, and knowing your own individual reason for eating is essential if you are hoping to make changes to the way you eat. You can't just change what you eat without knowing why you eat. Therefore, this webinar will explore the different possible triggers to eating, and hopefully this will help you to explore your own reasons for eating. Triggers to eating can be split between physical hunger and head hunger. So let's start with physical hunger. This is your naturally occurring hunger. It's discussed in more detail in the webinar on regular eating and the dieting cycle. This type of hunger occurs when we have not eaten for several hours, and your stomach then starts sending hunger signals. Often, if you're late for a meal or have missed a meal, then you may notice this feeling can be particularly strong. Some people may feel they never notice physical hunger, and hopefully the webinar on the dieting cycle and regular eating may help with this. As we mentioned earlier, we also have our head hunger. Other factors which cause us to eat can be referred to as head hunger. This means they are things that cause us to eat despite not feeling physically hungry. Generally, they can be placed into three main categories. Whilst I go through each of these, see if you can recognise any of them. Emotional triggers. Eating or changes to eating may be caused by any type of emotion. Some individuals find that feeling happy, sad, angry, or even frustrated can trigger eating to change. There are often several reasons for this, but biologically we know that food is a natural mood enhancer, which is why food is so often used by humans when mood is low. Social triggers. These can be more challenging to manage because they are influenced by those around you. An example of a social trigger to eating would be someone offering you a cake they have baked, being given food as a gift, or even attending social events and being encouraged to help yourself to more food. In these situations, it can seem rude to turn down food, and this makes it a very difficult trigger to avoid. Next up, we've got environmental triggers. These are caused by seeing or smelling food, in some cases even hearing food being cooked. Good examples of these are walking into a supermarket and smelling baked goods, or walking past takeaways and suddenly craving those foods despite not having thought about them for ages. Television adverts are another good example of environmental triggers, as we are often exposed to adverts where food is portrayed as tantalisingly tasty. You may have noticed how some of these triggers affect your eating as we have been through each one. You may also have started to think of triggers that don't fall into these categories. Your own individual triggers may also cross over between categories. For example, having food brought in by colleagues whilst at work would be an example of environmental and social. These are all really important to note. There is a category for other triggers, and examples that would go in here are boredom eating, feeling tired and using food as a way of feeling better, or eating out of habit. A good example of habitual eating is having a dessert after a main meal because that's what you've always done, or clearing your plate despite feeling physically full. Now you are aware that these triggers are a normal part of human life, hopefully it will give you the space to think about your own triggers to eating. To help with managing these triggers, it's important to first manage your physical hunger. The webinar on regular eating will hopefully help with this. It's important to spend some time exploring and learning your own physical hunger, because when physical hunger is out of control or very high, it will be even harder to manage your head hunger. For example, when walking into a shop, therefore automatically experiencing an environmental trigger of having food around you, whilst also being ravenous, makes it very difficult to avoid buying extra food. And there's a very high chance that you will walk out with more food than you intended. It's human nature. So to challenge your triggers, the first step is to be aware of them. Once you have learned how to manage physical hunger, and use the webinar on regular eating to support you with this, give yourself the space to start to tune in and notice what can trigger your eating. Thank you very much for listening. I hope it's been useful.